You talked about the kind of healthcare and data driven, medical system and Aura playing a role in that and wearables in general playing a role in that. How far off do you think that is? There have been obviously the hurdles with like the traditional medical and healthcare system, bureaucracy, red tape, like we're not going to use these things. We don't trust these things to some extent. They're not accessible for all people, right? In terms of cost and upkeep and all of that. But it's certainly trending in that direction. More people are wearing them. There's a ton of data that's out there. How does it get implemented? And is that on some type of timeline that you guys look at and point to?
Yeah, I think that this is actually a challenge that the entire industry needs to rise to, because I agree with your premise, which is that the healthcare industry is not going to move quickly here. But the thing that does move them is science, right? And, the more you invest in science, it illustrates and demonstrates the efficacy of, I don't know, improving sleep and its impact on reducing incidence of type 2 diabetes, or improving exercise and improving the impact that that has on dementia and mental health later in life. If the medical industry, broadly read, sees the science, they will follow the efficacy of science. So that's the first thing. And we're science led. We have a very significant, large investment in science who are constantly working with third parties, with research universities, with our own science team to do research to provide that data, which I think is the key to unlocking the change. Is there a timeline? I always think that the future is already here, Joe. It's already here. It's just not evenly distributed, right?
Mhm.
Meaning that there are doctors who run concierge medical practices and businesses that have been built on the back of this, who use the Aura Ring and the telemetry coming off someone's body to help and manage their patients. Like, that's today. Now, is it subsidized by big healthcare and insurers? No, it's not. And I think that's probably where ultimately all this goes, is that it becomes more accessible to people, because the medical science and, call it, the financial benefit to an insurer who realizes that if he gets, or they get their members to be more healthy and make more healthier choices, they will reduce their costs in the long term. And so they have a very strong profit motive to do that. I think it's all here today. It's just not evenly distributed. And so we see this. We see examples where in some countries, US is, in many ways a laggard, I think, in terms of innovating around healthcare. But in some countries, you see people who are leaning forward. We have a customer in Japan, which is an entire town, and they've outfitted 5,000 people in the town with Oura rings, and they're tracking them using the software to manage their day-to-day health condition, to understand if one of them might be coming down with influenza-related illnesses, or what the impact of stress is on what their sleep patterns are. They're looking at this data, and it's sort of like almost like a new form of governance. So could be kind of surveillance too, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful about the privacy and data implications of that. But like, it's happening. We're seeing that these enabling technologies are creating new modes of thinking about healthcare, which take you from sick care, which is, let's have the system bear the burden of someone who's sick, and let's figure out a way to get everyone else to pay who's healthy, so that we can take care of the sick people, which is important. And maybe move it to, like, how do we keep that person from getting sick in the first place? What are the healthy habits we can foster over a lifetime? What are the interventions that we can do earlier before we realize that someone's got full blown type 2 diabetes? When can we see if they're pre-diabetic? And I'm not saying that the Aura Ring can do all that stuff. It doesn't. I'm just saying I think that's where this goes. And I think it is important because, again, I go back to the mission. We're trying to make people healthier. There's $3 trillion spent every year in this country trying to make people healthier. And I think it could be allocated in a way very differently to subsidize this kind of technology for people, to help them make better, healthier choices and live better, healthier lives. And I think the outcome is really positive from that. So that's my soapbox. Like, maybe that's where we get to. I don't know. You asked me a timeline. Is it 5 years? Is it 3 years? I think we're starting to think about regulatory filings and the
Yep.
ways that we need to get in front of that. But it's a slow burn, no matter how you slice it, because the healthcare industry, even though the future's here, they're not going to adopt it, in a quarter.
Yeah, but it's as you laid it out, and I certainly agree that the innovation and companies like Aura and broadly across the industry now saying like, "Hey, how do we shift this? How do we turn it around?" And initially it's starting with the consumer focus, and slowly but surely you see different companies who are moving further down the healthcare path, and at some point sooner rather than later, that will be the other way around. I hope that it's starting from within healthcare and hospitals and the medical establishment to say like, hey, we need to implement these things because they have reached a point where you can't deny them. And I think that's where we are now, is still proving that out and pushing that boulder kind of up the hill, and hopefully we reach the summit here soon.